Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Cloud-Based Mayhem, and happy holidays. It is upon us. My, how time flies, right? Finally getting some snow here in the Rockies. It's been an incredibly dry, strange, warm fall, as I understand it's been in a lot of places. But we're finally getting a little bit of snow, and my mind is on skiing, but this one is all about really cool adventures with a wing and a packraft and a lot of vision. My guest today is Keith Forsyth. He makes his home up in the Pacific Northwest, and over the last bunch of years has been putting down some really incredible lines in very, very deep terrain. These are big treed areas with very few places to land out. Those of you that saw the Rockies Traverse with Will Gadd and I, kind of like that, but even denser. So a lot of high mountain lakes, some of the prettiest places on Earth, in my opinion. But I didn't know this. He's also put together some really amazing lines up in the Coast Range, up in BC, and using packrafts to get out, or sometimes just connect to the next place to fly. And also across the Olympics, which I didn't even think it was possible to fly in the Olympics. So some very inspiring stuff. Keith got his start, as you'll hear, in skydiving and then speed flying and base and wingsuiting, and has given most of that up to just fly cool lines with a paraglider and bivvy and a whole bunch of whatever he can carry on his back, and putting together some really cool adventures. He's also an instructor and has been helping Henzie out with SIVs the last few summers, also up there in the Northwest, and I think you'll find this pretty inspiring. It certainly was for me. I want to get out there and do more of this. I used to do tons of this baby stuff, and life has gotten in the way, but I'm pretty inspired after talking to Keith to doing this more. And if you're still looking for something for Christmas, head on over to cloudbasedmayhem.com and go to our shop and pick up any of the number of things there. We got some cool Patagonia t-shirts, some new trucker hats, and of course my book, Advanced Paragliding. Or if you want to help support the show in 2026, you can find the link there to go to Patreon, our Patreon page, and support. If you support at $3 or more a show, which is about $55 for a year, if you do the annual option there and just pack it away, so about a cup of coffee a month is all we're asking for, then I'll send you a t-shirt or a trucker hat on me. And support of the holidays and support, hopefully, your favorite show. It really does go a long ways, and it helps keep us on the air ad-free. Hang on tight. This is a fun ride. Enjoy. And Merry Christmas. Keith, welcome to the show, man. I appreciate your time. I thought I'd be talking to you up in the Pacific Northwest, but you're down in Salt Lake. What are you doing down there?
I'm down here working for a friend for a little bit, just taking a break from the Northwest, and enjoy some just skiing down here during the winter. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, you bet. I've been jealously and enviously following your pursuits up in the Northwest the last few years. Maybe before we get to some of these very cool lines you've been throwing down up in that terrain, tell everybody what's your background here. I was just reading up on you this morning. You've been flying about 10 years. How'd you get into all this, and how did you get into this kind of niche of flying?
Yeah, so I got going into air sports back in 2011, initially with skydiving, and it's kind of a slow start there, but a few years into that, got pretty excited about it. Started working in skydiving for about 5 years, and while I was doing that, started doing some speed flying and base jumping as well. And then it wasn't until later down the road where I kind of discovered paragliding and just realized it was a unique tool to use in the mountains, more so than speed flying in some circumstances. And once I kind of got my first taste of thermaling, I was all in and been pursuing that for the last 7 or 8 years.
Do you still do a ton of speed flying?
No, I actually stopped speed flying about 5 or 6 years ago.
Why?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of that had to do with the amount of margin, and just saw a lot of accidents, and had a lot of friends close to me have accidents, and had a lot of close calls myself. And I just found that to like to keep it stimulating, the amount of margin that I was consistently like, it just wasn't enough there. So slowly backed off of that, and eventually I found it was just a better idea to stop doing it entirely.
Interesting. I haven't heard that. Speed flying has been an interesting, I don't know, journey for me. I guess, I really have enjoyed it on skis, but I'm not great at it, I guess is what it comes down to. It's kind of like mountain biking for me. I think I'm better than I am. And I've had some really bad accidents mountain biking. And I finally decided a couple years ago to just quit, just not do it. And I miss it. I really miss the uphill. I miss the exercise part of it, but I was tired of it putting me in the hospital. I've been lucky with flying, hasn't put me in the hospital, but with speed flying, it's interesting to hear the margin thing. It's kind of the same reason I enjoyed doing some base, but I could kind of see the writing on the wall. Is that what it was for you? Is it just, okay, this is going to end poorly?
Yeah, I just saw the trajectory of progression was really reducing the margin like continuously over time, and just didn't really see it sustainable long term. And
are you still jumping?
I still skydive every now and then, but I stopped base jumping around the same time. Still something that I'm thinking about maybe doing again someday, but at the time, it's just there's so many interesting things to do that it's hard to stay consistent in all of it.
Was part of it, I mean, I don't know if that was a transition or just cold stop, but was part of it just in discovering thermal flying and the possibilities? Was that just, was part of it just discovering in a sense that, there's more potential here?
Yeah, I'd say that's one aspect of it. Because before like speed flying, base jumping, I used to do a lot of skiing and backcountry skiing. And I think just with the air sports, you're able to start exploring like a bigger portion of the mountain in a way. And then with thermal flying, you're taking that to the next extent of like able to cross an entire range. And just the growth of potential, as you mentioned, is quite interesting.
And so take me through a little bit, and feel free to deep dive on this if it's worthy of that, but it's how you really, I think, pretty quickly locked in on these kind of pretty expeditionary based bivvies, or did that take a while? Take me through your XC kind of progression in that adventure.
Yeah, so it happened pretty early on, and I think that's just partially the nature of flying in the Northwest, where I live. Most of the things are pretty hard to get to, and with speed flying and hike and fly, I was starting to explore like some of the bigger peaks there that sometimes take a couple days to hike. So already through the hike and fly stuff and speed flying, I was already doing the multi-day camping on the way in. And with paragliding, it just felt like a natural transition of continuing that backpacking style with it. So as getting more into the cross country, just being comfortable in that terrain over time, I think really helped open it up of being comfortable landing in these backcountry areas where maybe hiking the next day out wasn't that big of a deal. And it kind of over time, like help prevent what I kind of call ground suck or car suck. Well, not what I call, it's pretty common, but just being comfortable in that terrain, having the supplies with you, I think just kind of alleviates that pressure to really end up back at the car at the end of the day.
Are you planning these with kind of anything more than a start?
Yes. Yeah, it's a good question. I definitely piece together a lot. So in the Cascades specifically, there's just not a whole lot for landings. Once you get closer to the crest of the mountains, just with the amount of trees we have, very deep valleys and kind of small, tight creeks coming down from these glaciated volcanoes. So a lot of that initial puzzle and planning is really trying to open up and find where can you go while still maintaining some margin. And I think a saying that I heard early on that I really liked, actually Jeff Shapiro told me this, was with trad climbing, it's like if you can place really good gear, you can try really hard. And then I think that actually like transfers into paragliding in a way is if you can find your outs, like have ways to fly out of a valley system, have an high alpine meadow, all of a sudden you can start flying and trying these more technical lines that may have a smaller chance of actually making it work, but you have your out, you have that protection in a way. So that's where I kind of start my planning, is just understanding where there's margin and where there's these outs along the way, and then waiting for those days that like the weather patterns correlate to make that happen.
These outs that are along the way, are you talking about you're finding these on Google Earth and kind of laying it all down in advance, or are you talking about reading it on the fly? You know, like Will and I did on the Canadian Traverse. We just started going, and there were often times where it just, whoa, that we must climb now, and we must climb now.
Right. I'd say there's a bit of both, and I think one that you didn't mention is I spent a lot of time hiking out there and actually going and getting feet on the ground in some of these areas to make sure, like, what might look like an out on Google Earth is, there's times where I was like, oh, that's certainly going to work. And then I'm like, just to be safe, I'm going to go look at it. And sure enough, it's like
these timber cuts,
3-foot boulders, or timber cuts on a sandbar, or just something. Is like, oh wait, there's no way I could land here safely.
The timber cuts, we should describe that. You're in a part of the world that there's a lot of timber operations, and I hadn't seen that kind of thing, up front. I remember the first day going up to launch with Will, he said, hey, everywhere you see that looks like a good landing, I promise you it isn't. It's going to suck. If it's a clear cut, you just cannot go in there. If you do pull it off and land, you can't get out. So those listening, you can imagine clear cut. I mean, these are huge Doug fir stands. I mean, they're massive trees, and then they go in and clear cut them, and it's nasty, right? I mean, they're terrible, but from the sky they look pretty good. You're just surrounded by a sea of trees everywhere, and then there's this whole area that's a nice little square that looks pretty decent, and then you get down close and it's just awful.
Yeah, it can be quite deceiving. And the other one that's really deceiving that gets you off guard is like wildland burn areas, where it looks like everything's cleared off from a burn, but all of a sudden, like when you do get closer, there's just like very skinny dead trees that like you can't see from certain angles, and all of a sudden there's like, oh yeah, there's no way I could take a glider in there.
Like power poles with a bunch of sharp edges on them.
Yeah, exactly.
So you would actually go in, you've gone in advance on foot and just backpacking and checking things out.
Yeah, and a lot of that is from
Dedicated.
When I was doing more just hike and fly. Just spending a lot of time actually like walking all the LZs prior. And then there's times like there's a smaller range in Southwest Washington called the Olympics, where it was interested in trying to fly across that, and spent time hiking in from both directions to get a better understanding of what that area actually looked like before kind of going in blind.
Dude, I didn't know you did that. You've flown the Olympics? Has anybody else flown the Olympics?
No, I think there's still a lot of potential to be had out there, but it's not a big range by any standards, but it is a really stunning area.
And how did it work? I would think that would be so overpowered by the sea breeze, and that's. How did you just go in there and give it a shot, or did you have a pretty good idea from looking at weather in advance that it would go? Yeah,
so it's funny. So from Seattle, you can actually look west over to the Olympics, and you often see these days with like stunning, like great cumulus clouds, high base. And then when I first started looking into it closer, I had done some speed flying on the southern end. So I started there and kind of did some days where I'd just work a few moves in, see how the day would work, kind of come back out. And then I did the same thing from the north side, where I'd just start piecing together the first few pieces and then go back out. And then eventually was able to make the whole transition. But yeah, it was interesting because through those previous trips, little by little, you start to build that kind of mental picture, or that model of what those weather patterns are. And it was really interesting because it is such a small range and surrounded almost by like three sides by water. You get a lot of draw. So like as you go from the south to the north side, the lower weather patterns shift dramatically. And just having those previous trips was quite telling and made the whole experience a lot more comfortable and almost fulfilling as a whole, instead of just going into it blind and just like sending it. I try to avoid that mentality as much as possible.
And is there a style rule to how you operate? What am I trying to say? Is there a way you go into these that's, like the Olympics? Okay, I'm going to connect this in a certain way. I'm going to start here and end there in a certain way. Is there any kind of structure?
Yeah. It's interesting to think about. So it's kind of a side note, but what I find interesting about participating in like a few different types of sports, I think each community has a really unique like mindset or approach. And I think they transfer, and like you can pull things from sport to sport. So like when you first mentioned like a style in which you go about it, I think climbing is one where there's this decades long debate of just like alpine style or climate style, or like how do you bolt a route, or there's just so much discussion around that. And maybe there's more discussion happening now in paragliding of like how should you go about it, and base jumping. I think it was something that is kind of lacking initially, where it does kind of have a bad reputation and potentially seen as reckless. So I think all this to say is like going back to paragliding, just trying to do it in a way that feels like you're maintaining some level of margin and understanding the variables at hand. Which there's always stuff that like you don't know, and that takes time to learn, but trying to gather that as much as possible ahead of time. I don't know if that fully answers your question or not.
Yeah, no, it does. I was just kind of thinking, when you take on an objective like the Olympics, I got to ask you about launches and stuff. I mean, are you flying with a machete or a chainsaw, or how are you finding places? I mean, I've spent quite a bit of time. I used to do a lot of paddling out there. It is thick, really thick.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of those high alpine meadows actually have like, there will be the high alpine lakes, and a lot of them have kind of small grassy meadows next to them. So it's an interesting style of flying because you're never that high above the terrain. But if you get low, like the first thought should be like, oh, I need to land soon. And it's kind of a funny mentality because like all of a sudden, like you mentioned, you probably spent a lot of time down in the bottom of those creeks. Like, yeah, it's dense. Like there's nowhere to land. So as long as you kind of keep that mentality of like, oh, land high, land early, there is options along the way.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking more, so when you have an objective, I mean, and you've put together some big lines in the Cascades, up to the Canadian border and stuff, is there, okay, I'm going to fly a certain percentage of this, or is it just, I'm going to start, see how far I can get on this trip, I've got 2 weeks kind of thing? I mean, is there I don't feel like I've fulfilled my mission unless I've flown a certain part of it or all of it, or are you trying to connect the whole thing in the air, or does it just not matter?
It's somewhere in the middle, but I would say it almost leans to like, I'm pretty open to where it ends up. I think what appeals to me most about flying in the Cascades is flying and finding little pockets that I haven't quite seen yet. Instead of like, I've never been one for chasing distances, although I think it is fun and it's like a great way to develop skill over time. But like, I'd rather fly 10 kilometers over like a really cool looking range than turn the other direction just to get 50 or whatever.
Right. You're more into the aesthetic.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, I'll definitely like, if I see a good like cloud streak forming one way or a peak that just looks stunning and I just want to go look at it, I'll deviate for that. And so yeah, I kind of let the trip unfold. I'd say in the Cascades, I do have an understanding of where I want to go. And that's generally going back to that other point of just, there's ways there's kind of ways you have to work around it to maintain some of those landing options along the way. And I think just over the years of doing more and more flying in that area, I start to get a better understanding of like how you can connect some of those features. Mm.
How are you? Are you a solo kind of guy, or are you doing this with other people?
A bit of both. Yeah. I definitely enjoy doing it with other people, and if I had to choose, I more often than not would. But yeah, it's one of those things like if people are busy, I usually don't let that stop me or try not to. Are you
taking these on just by weather windows, or are you more locked into certain times because of work, or is the kind of thing where, okay, I've got a 3-day window? Because I mean, the Cascades are not known for great deals of long windows of good flying. You know, things change up there real quick, as they do here in the Rockies. So how do you approach that side of things?
Yeah, I've been pretty fortunate the last few years where I've really shaped my work to allow a lot of flexibility during the summer to chase those good weather windows.
So it pops and you go and just see what comes together. So
yeah, exactly.
Are you how many days can you go? And remind everybody who hasn't been up in the Northwest, can you resupply, or are you packing and that's it? You've got that amount to survive on.
Yeah, that's a good question. There are kind of places you could resupply once you get away from the crest, but generally in the Cascades and the Coast Mountains, you take what you need. So honestly, even if I'm just going for a day flight, more often than not, I'll pack at least an extra day's worth of food, just because it's pretty easy to accidentally land somewhere and have a full day hike out. When I'm doing some of the longer trips, I'll usually pack about 7 days worth of food.
What does that look like?
So once you start getting 7 days worth of food, the pack gets pretty heavy. I mean, this, probably better than anyone. So it's really, a lot of it's just freeze-dried food, a lot of bars, it doesn't necessarily taste the best, but it gets you by.
Yeah.
Say as far as most of the kit goes, I try to keep it pretty light with like a really minimalist bivvy kit. Sometimes bring the stove. But yeah, you don't really need much when you're just out hiking and backpacking.
So tent or a bivvy sack, or you get a lot of rain up there, or are you really isolating these to when you're pretty good shape in terms of staying dry and you just sleep in your wing?
Yeah. Usually do bring a tent. That's a good question. Ideally sticking to the better weather windows, but with the unpredictability of weather and a lot of the best days that you have in the Cascades and the Coast Mountains, and I guess mountains in most places, are kind of those days that are right on the verge of overdevelopment. So, rain is always a potential. So bring the tent. And then what I've been doing for most of the summer trips is I just kind of have a modified concertina bag that I use to kind of consolidate the wing, and then that's the sleeping bag. So that helps cut down on weight quite a bit.
Oh, so you are just sleeping in your wing?
Yeah, but using the tent as well for the rain protection. And
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes a stove, sometimes not. I imagine there's plenty of stuff you can make a fire with, although I guess it's sometimes pretty wet.
Yeah. Usually you can do fires, a lot of the flying season here starts to overlap with fire season, where we get a lot of wildland fires. So that's pretty frowned upon later in the season.
Sure.
But with the freeze-dried food, if you're really trying to cut weight and don't bring the stove, you just end up cold soaking it, where it's kind of mushy, but
gross.
You're still getting the calories at least. And it's not my favorite, but there's times when you're like packing extra gear, like climbing or packrafting gear, and then you start cutting out every bit of weight that you can.
Are you more focused on fat or protein, or, a lot of the freeze dried stuff is, it's pretty tasty, but there's not a lot of calories. What are you bringing? Are you a Nick Nanon's kind of guy? You gotta just put 5 pounds of cheese in your bag and call it good?
Yeah, usually start with a block of cheese and salami. That's always a good go-to.
Yeah.
And throw that into freeze-dried meals. Usually, like spruces it up a little bit. And a lot of bars when it starts to trying to get more like the calorie dense, kind of low pack volume. It ends up just being a lot of bars.
What wing and harness are you flying?
Yeah, so I'm flying the Zeolite 2 and the Bivvy 1.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that harness. Are you pulling is that a foam protector? Do you pull that out and use that for space, or how do you have plenty of space in that?
So it has the under seat storage compartment and then an inflatable bag that goes around that area. So I generally try to pack all the soft goods, like tent. If I have a packraft, I'll put that underneath there. Any extra layers, and usually the food, anything that can take an impact in kind of the event of a crash. Ideally, you're not having the circumstances, but you're always planning around the worst case scenario. And yeah, just trying to keep all the heavyweight items as low as possible and close to those connection points to minimize any impact to the handling of the wing.
And what packraft are you using?
I have the Kokopelli Nirvana.
And was that about 5 kg, something like that?
That sounds about right. Once you start getting
12 pounds.
All the bits and pieces and the paddle together.
And okay, so you're always flying with that, or is that something that, okay, this is a very particular objective, I'm going to try to get to this headwater type thing?
Yeah, that one's definitely more specific. In the Cascades, I haven't done much of that. Most of that is up in the coast mountains, just with much bigger valley systems and much more friendly rivers. Because yeah, it sounds like you've done some paddling in the Northwest, and most of the stuff in Washington's not very friendly when it comes to
steep
to pack rafting.
Steep and choked. And so coast mountain, you mean up in BC? What do you mean?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah.
So
just
you're
north
doing a
of
bunch of that up
Pemberton.
there? Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Let's transition to that.
Incredible.
Bitchin'. It's kind of embarrassing. And the only time I've ever flown Pemberton was when I was about 10-hour pilot. I did a little sleder there one time and did a really bad ground spiral into the ground, trying to be fancy. No, I mean, I didn't crash or anything. It was just, I was a 10-hour pilot. What do you expect? Yeah. I was a moron. But wow, what a beautiful area. So where are you? Again, we probably have to orient the listener to this zone. Where are you going? Are you using the kind of the standard launch there in Pemberton, and then heading which way, and how are you coming out?
Yeah, so Pemberton, to give those an idea, is southwest BC, a few hours north of Vancouver, so just north of the U.S. border. So there's a lot of incredible flying and a great flying community in Pemberton itself, and a few launches right in that valley. And then a lot of the flying we're starting to do there is heading west or northwest, up along the coast to, up through some of those inlets. And it's really interesting because like once you get maybe 50, 60 kilometers north, maybe a little bit farther, there's still a lot of unflown and really unique flying to be had. And as far as like VOLBIP potential, it's significantly more friendly than the Cascades and some of the ranges in the United States.
Why is that?
Just with some of the bigger terrain, there's a lot more alpine tundra. So a lot friendlier, higher landings.
Okay.
Yeah, above tree line, exactly. Some of the river systems are much larger, so there's more significant sandbars to land on. The only downside when I say more friendly, it's more friendly from a flying perspective, but it is actually significantly more remote than a lot of the stuff in the U.S. You have some old logging roads, and some of the inlets are still active logging areas. So there are communities here and there, but you come across them a lot less frequently.
And how are you figuring out the river side of things? Is this just, again, just scouting it all out on Google Earth and putting it together? Or are these established kayaking runs and, there's guidebooks on them and stuff and you just got to get to it? Yeah,
a bit of both. So kind of going back to that question you asked earlier of like how much of it's planned ahead of time of like I need to end up at point B, or how much of it is kind of figuring out on the go, where a lot of the trips in the coast mountains, introducing the packraft is really interesting because it actually, in some ways, like increases the margin or in where you can fly, because all of a sudden you have this secondary tool to actually cover ground and get out of the mountains. Where otherwise, if you try to travel some of that area by foot, you'd just be spending days bushwhacking. So the packraft has kind of a multi-purpose tool. Not only is it quite enjoyable, but allows for transportation. So when looking and kind of planning what rivers to use, a lot of it is trying to figure out which ones are reasonable to packraft. So generally we're looking for stuff like class 3 and under, and like portaging anything more than that. So if there's like multiple rivers in a row, we try to gather as much research as we can on each of those. So then, if we have to use any of them, we kind of have an understanding of what we're getting into.
And are you flying in, or are you putting caches in or anything, or is this still just what you can carry on your back?
Yeah, just what we can carry.
Have you have you had many multi-day outs?
So a lot of the trips in the coast mountains are about a week long.
Okay.
Usually about 6 or 7 days.
So what, like 3 days of flying and 3 days river kind of stuff, or?
Yeah, and some of them, the really fun ones are you're going back and forth where you're able to get like a couple days in the air and then like spending a couple days on the river, and then you're in a new spot, and then you're flying back in.
Wicked.
And then packraft back out, and just like going back and forth between the two as the weather allows.
Amazeballs. You've got a background in rivers, right?
I'm quite new to it still. I've only been packrafting about 3-4 years.
Oh, but you don't have whitewater experience? You don't have like hard shell experience stuff?
No, it's funny. I started packrafting before I started whitewater kayaking, and I've been trying to, as I have free time, I've been trying to spend more time in a hard boat just to gain more experience from that side of things.
Sure. I'm amazed with packrafts. I haven't done any flying with one and using one in that way, which I'm dying to do. And we've got some really cool potential around Idaho, of course, for that. So it's on the radar for sure. But my background really for a long time was rivers. I'd done a ton of kayaking. And when I started doing some of these packraft trips, they're just insane boats. They're just insane. They're incredible. I've got a buddy that I do a lot of this with, who's an IFMGA guide, and his background, he's a mountain guy, it has no river background. And we've run some pretty tough stuff, he's got very little experience, so it's kind of fun because he can guide me in the mountains and I can guide him on the rivers. And, they're just incredible. They're incredibly tough and durable and light, and you can put so much stuff in them, and they're easy to portage. I mean, what a cool tool. This is a really neat thing. I think it's going to really open up. Well, we're seeing it already, and what you're doing, and what Ty's doing up in Alaska, and it's God, what you just kind of blows up the possibilities, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it's just pretty cool what you can do with them.
Yeah, and you just don't have to be really that great of a paddler to get down, pretty technical stuff. I mean, they're very forgiving, and they're very easy to get out and get back in, and you can wet enter, and they're pretty amazing craft. Yeah. So what's on your radar after doing, what do you get excited about?
Yeah, I think what I'm kind of looking forward to and excited to explore more of is just keep diving back into the coast mountains. I'd like to do some trips up in Alaska. I've yet to actually be up there, and I know you spent some time up there, and it just, from everyone who's been up there, it just sounds incredible. It's
big. In a good way, really big.
Yeah, that
mind-blowingly big. And you're working with Henzi. You're doing some SIV. Are you running the boat or running the winch?
Yep, exactly. So I've been helping Henzi with clinics the last 5 or so years, on and off. Mostly driving the boat. Yeah, winch operator. And that's been a really, really interesting experience, and been learning a lot from them. It's really been enjoying that.
Are you getting a lot of time to do a bunch of SIV on your own? For you as well?
Yeah, especially the first few years, I was still quite keen and getting up as much as I could. So yeah, during most clinics, I would be able to get a handful of toes in.
What are you learning there? What's been kind of some of the, I don't know, give me 3 big takeaways from just being on the water, seeing it over and over and over again. What are the most important things that come out of that kind of training, and being around that kind of training?
So yeah, when I think about training and like developing like the wing handling skills out there, I think one of the biggest takeaways would be just trying to get your wing into like these unpredictable configurations and just sorting it out from there. And a lot of that is just spending time on the wing that you like fly in the mountains. So initially, like especially the first few years, I was just taking my old Alpina. Once I like got a newer one, so I would just rag out my old one, doing a bunch of toes on it, trying to heli it unsuccessfully. But like, I think that's just as good a practice of trying to sort out and get it flying again. Yeah, I'd say like, yeah, spending time of just in these uncontrolled configurations makes it so you have, so actually that's a good question. So I guess the way I would think about that is it just allows more bandwidth to when where you are cross country flying, and starting to allow more time to think about other decisions and route planning and getting like coring the thermal better rather than just handling the wing. And I think I didn't really notice this at the time or through that progression, but I spend less and less of my time like looking at the wing or specifically trying to overhandle it while flying. And it just, spending that time during those SRVs really, really benefited that.
Thinking back to these bivvies again, I'm jumping around here a little bit, but you've done a bunch of these missions. Do you have one that really stands out? And if so, why? And that could even be just a flight, but it could also just be an experience you had on the ground, just something that really pops, or maybe something that keeps drawing you back. I want more of that experience.
Yeah, I think the core thing that I really enjoy about a lot of them, and I'd say I could pick a specific one, it would be 2 summers ago now, one of the trips that my friend Corey and I did in the Coast Mountains, where we started just north of Pemberton and went up to Bella Coola. And it's just the unpredictability of it all, like just experience after experience unfolded of just like not knowing what was going to happen next. Like at one point after portaging, we were putting into a river and a tree, like 100-foot tree, fell across the river. And like right as we were about to pull out of an eddy. And it's just like one of the craziest things I've seen. And then we were in another river and it was during the salmon run. So it was just like thousands of salmon like swimming up this thing. So every time you stuck your paddle in, it would change colors. And it was just,
and you must have eaten well on that trip too.
Yeah, every once in a while you'd like try to dangle a hook behind the packraft and try to get lucky. But and I think the other part that really stood out to me on a lot of those other trips is when you did start popping into these communities, just the people you'd meet along the way. And I think that is starting to become more and more important to me in a lot of these outdoor sports, is not only the internal community, but the external community. And what I'm starting to find is I really appreciate how a lot of these outdoor mountain sports are almost act as like an icebreaker into the community that you're spending that time in. I feel like it breaks down that initial barrier. It gives you a starting point, and then you can get to know these people more, rather than just like showing up in a place and trying to force that interaction, I guess. I guess, sticking with that trip up to Bella Coola, there's a pretty funny point where we were paddling out this river called that Narco that links into the Bella Coola, and we're like decked out, like helmets on, PFDs on, like packs with all our extra gear on. And then we hadn't seen anyone in a couple days. And then we turn this corner and all of a sudden there's like these 2 kids on pool toys. And we're just like, whoa, like we felt like we were doing something pretty cool. And it's like, oh, we are out of place. And then all of a sudden, like the next person we see is like a dad and his daughter on the stand-up paddleboard. And
we're not really that remote.
Yeah. And this guy just like looks at us and he's like, where are you guys coming from? So he kind of just like,
what's with the helmets? Jeez.
Yeah, exactly. And so we just like shoot off like a couple of things of what we were doing. He's like, wait, pull over. Like, we got to hear more about this. So then we start just chatting with this guy on the side of the river. And then he mentions, he's like, oh yeah, like we have a property down this valley on like, you can camp on our beach. So they show us on a map where it is. And sure enough, like we paddle another 30 kilometers or so. And then the next day we camp there and like, we're like, all right, we're going to go find this guy and walk up to find his house, and they like make us coffee the next morning. And it's just like those interactions of just like meeting these people are quite special. And I just really enjoy that aspect of it.
Yeah, that part's special. Have you ever had any of these go completely sideways?
I don't know if I'd say sideways, because there's definitely been some that have been really unexpected in the way that they've turned out, but never in like a negative way. Because I think that's part of it, is just being open to how they unfold.
Yeah, it's all part of the adventure. Any close calls?
Yeah, not so much with paragliding. I feel like most of my close calls had some in speed flying, had one in base jumping. And I guess there's like a couple in paragliding that feel like kind of uncomfortably close. Like I think one that really stands out to me that is kind of a good reminder of planning and not getting ahead of yourself is actually just chatting with this event to a friend the other day. I was coming out of the Forsyth wilderness, which is kind of the northeastern section of the Cascades. And I had just spent a few days back there climbing, and I was like flying back out, and I could see the town of Mazama. And I was like looking at my watch, and I was like, okay, like it's still early, like the bar's going to be open. Like I had it all planned out. I was
Go to the bakery.
I got it on glide. Yeah. And then I just started like fumbling with my flight deck and like doing all these random things. And all of a sudden, like I see the ridge that I need to clear. I'm like, oh wait, I don't know if I have this. And I had fully deviated my flight path to a way where like all of a sudden that ridge became mandatory. And I just got complacent in the moment. And all of a sudden, as I get closer and closer, I realized like I don't have it by like 50 feet. And like at one point I was thousands of feet above this ridge. So it's like a 20-minute glide that this happened over. And like, if I wasn't doing all this fumbling and being complacent, I had so many points where I could have fixed that decision. But I'd waited too long. And then all of a sudden I started running out of a valley in the lee and got lucky that there was a forest road that ran this ridge in parallel that was lined with trees, but just had a few areas where you could just sneak it in between trees and put it on the forest road. And it was one of those experiences. It's like, wow, like I didn't plan to have that out there. Like this was pure dumb luck. So yeah, I'd say that's like definitely a close call that I had in paragliding a few years ago.
That's a good cheap mistake, isn't it? Ooh.
Yeah, I felt incredibly lucky after that.
Yeah.
Whereas just there's so many it's always hindsight, right? If there's just like there's so many red flags, there's so many chances to fix that error, but just let it draw out too long.
Started thinking about beer, man. That's always dangerous.
That's the problem.
But I get it. That was at the end of Alaska. That's all I could think about. I said, "Oh my God, I can't wait to have a beer." And I landed in it was close to this little town, and it ended up being Dry Village. Yes, you couldn't get any beer. I was like, "Oh my God, 37 days, I can't get a beer." But yeah, wow, that's a good cheap mistake. Last question. I don't believe you don't do much racing. You said early on that you And I might have that wrong, but I don't think so. And then you said early on that, numbers aren't really that motivating for you. I think many people listening are applauding that, including me, and just, that flying for the aesthetic is really the best reason, but often hard. It's hard to stay away from that game. We do have egos. What has allowed you to, I don't know, keep it more pure?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the numbers and the stats side are an interesting part of all these sports. And I think there's a lot of growth to be had, and like growth and progression to be had through all that. So I don't think it's bad on its own. But yeah, I think once you start tying a lot of the motivation directly to that, I think that's where a lot of that potential negativity can come from. And I used to have more of that, I'd say, with some of the other sports. Like I used to ski race. I did some competing when I was wingsuiting with like wingsuit races. And then, so I used to be a bit more tied to the statistics, but I think just over time, I've found that there's other aspects of these sports that I find more interesting and more intriguing than tying it directly to those motivators of hitting certain numbers. Yeah.
I like that. And I think that's it's a good one we all need to kind of sit on a little bit and ponder more. Keith, special lines, man. It's really been awesome and very inspiring watching what you've been doing. I didn't even know about the Olympics one. I got to go back and look at those track logs. That's amazing. And well done, and appreciate your time. And I can't wait to go out and chase some of the stuff you've been doing. It's been too long for me. That was my bread and butter for a long time, and it's just been, life's gotten more in the way lately. So I'm excited to pursue some of these flying objectives in a different way. But thanks for sharing your story, man.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, hopefully we can link up for some lines one of these days.
That'd be sweet. I'd love it. That'd be great. Cool, man. Talk to you soon.
Cool. Talk soon.
If you find that Cloud-Based Mayhem valuable, you can support it in a lot of different ways. All of them incredibly important to keep this show going. You can give us a rating on whatever platform you listen to. You can blog about it on your website or share it on social media. You can talk about it on the way up to launch with your friends. I know a lot of good conversations have happened that way, and of course, you can support the show financially. The show does take a lot of time, a lot of editing, storage, music, behind-the-scenes cost, and all we've ever asked for is $1 a show. We put out a show every 2 weeks, so if you gave us $1 a show, that's $25 a year. Quite a bit less than a magazine subscription and way less than a latte a month. You'll notice we don't have 10 minutes of advertising at the top of the show, which we get asked to do all the time, believe me. I believe advertising is a pretty toxic business model, and I want you, the listener, to know that these conversations are just authentic people giving their opinions, and we aren't being swayed by brands. But that means we rely on you, our listener. If and only if you can support the show and it doesn't hurt your pocketbook, we'd really appreciate it. Go to the website to find various ways to support the show through Patreon or other platforms where we've gone through great lengths to minimize fees so your money gets directly to us. Becoming a subscriber gives you access to all kinds of bonus information, little nuggets that don't make it into the podcast, extra content, our Ask Me Anything shows, and a lot more. We don't put anything behind a paywall and never will. If you can't afford to support the show, just send me an email and I'll set you up with an account, no questions asked. Hopefully someday you'll be in a position where you can. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support. We'll see you at Cloud Base.